My wife's father forced himself on my mom, and now she's defending him by filing false domestic violence charges against me and my family. I never thought a celebration would turn my life upside down. My wife and I had always trusted each other, sharing everything, our fears, our dreams, our entire lives. But that trust shattered in one night, leaving me grappling with betrayal I could never have anticipated. It started with her birthday celebration. She insisted we head to her family's lake house in upstate New York, a secluded property surrounded by dense woods and a view of the lake that was breathtaking during the fall. My wife Alyssa, 29, and I both worked corporate jobs in Manhattan, and we were excited to escape the city for a while. Alyssa's father, 56, a construction executive, owned the property, and her mother was a homemaker. Alyssa's younger sister was in college, and like us, came up for the celebration. My mom, a high school teacher from Pennsylvania, joined as well. Since my parents divorced when I was young, it had always been just the two of us, so her presence was important to me. That night we had a small, intimate gathering with a few close family friends. Everyone was in high spirits, enjoying drinks, cake, and music. Alyssa convinced my mom to have a drink or two, which was rare for her. My mom, who only drank occasionally, was soon feeling a little tipsy and decided to head upstairs early to rest. I noticed she took her phone but left her purse and shoes in the living room, so I figured she'd only be lying down briefly. As the night wore on, Alyssa and I were both fairly intoxicated ourselves. Around 1:30 a.m., I found my mom's phone on the sofa and asked Alyssa's sister to bring it up to her. But she returned, saying my mom's door was locked. I found it strange. My mom rarely locked doors, especially not at a family gathering. I decided to check on her myself. When I reached the room, I knocked several times but heard nothing over the loud music. Then, I caught the faint sound of something falling inside, a glass or a small object. I rushed downstairs and asked someone to lower the music. But as I turned back, I saw Alyssa's father slip out of my mom's room and hurry down the hall toward his own bedroom. My heart sank. Something wasn't right. I opened the door and found my mother in a horrible state, passed out on the bed, disheveled, with her clothes in disarray. I froze, horrified at what I was seeing. It was clear Alyssa's father had been there, and it was obvious what he had done. The reality was almost too much to bear. I called for Alyssa, and within minutes, the party came to an abrupt halt. One of Alyssa's friends, who was a doctor, checked on my mother, and confirmed that while she was passed out due to alcohol, she had likely been assaulted. We rushed her to the nearest hospital, where doctors ran tests and monitored her condition. As we waited, I explained to Alyssa what I had seen, her father sneaking out of the room, my mother unconscious and violated. But instead of reacting with horror or disbelief, Alyssa's expression hardened. "My dad would never do something like that," she said flatly, crossing her arms. Her mother, who had just arrived at the hospital, backed her up instantly, claiming I must have misunderstood. I was dumbfounded. I had seen him with my own eyes, and the situation was undeniable. But they both insisted I must have been mistaken, that maybe a worker or someone else had slipped in, and that my mother, being drunk, might be confused. The more they tried to defend him, the more nauseated I felt. My wife, the woman I had vowed to spend my life with, was standing by a lie. Over the following days, my mother remained adamant that Alyssa's father had assaulted her. She recalled feeling drowsy when he entered, then struggling as he locked the door. The next thing she knew, she woke up in the hospital. I begged Alyssa to reconsider, to see reason, but she dug her heels in deeper. "Your mom was drunk," she argued, "and people get things mixed up when they drink. This could have been a misunderstanding." I was at my breaking point, torn between defending my mother's honor and holding on to a marriage I thought was built on love. My mother, seeing my agony, tried to dissuade me from pursuing the matter legally. "Let it go for your own peace," she urged, heartbroken. But I couldn't let it go. Not after what he had done to her. Then, it escalated. A week after the incident, I was served divorce papers. Alyssa was claiming domestic violence, emotional abuse, and a list of false charges against me and my mother. She even requested a restraining order and full control of our assets, twisting the narrative to ruin me. As I processed the divorce papers, I felt numb. She was tearing me down, not just emotionally but legally, and tarnishing my mother's reputation. I realized I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. In a moment of clarity, I recalled the security cameras around her family's lake house. I hadn't seen cameras inside the bedrooms, but there might be footage in the hallways. I contacted a private investigator who managed to retrieve the footage from the night of the party. I watched with a mixture of dread and relief as the footage confirmed what I had seen. Alyssa's father was on camera, entering my mom's room and leaving a half-hour later, looking disheveled. With this evidence, I filed a countersuit for defamation, filing false charges and obstruction of justice, and I included the footage as evidence. Court proceedings were intense, and Alyssa tried to defend her father, but the footage was undeniable. The judge viewed it, and there was no way to dispute what was on that screen. Alyssa's fabricated accusations fell apart. Her father was charged with assault, and Alyssa faced legal consequences for perjury and obstructing justice. The court granted me a swift divorce, and the judge issued a restraining order against Alyssa and her family on my behalf and my mother's. As the courtroom fell silent, the judge delivered the final verdict. Alyssa and her father both sat across from me, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and desperation. Her father, once so smug and self-assured, now looked small and broken, a shadow of the man he had been when he tried to deny everything. And Alyssa, who had spent the entire trial coldly defending him and tearing down my family, now looked defeated, staring down at her hands. Her composure finally cracked. The judge's voice echoed through the room, harsh and unrelenting. The court finds Alyssa Matthews guilty of filing false charges and obstructing justice. Her father, Daniel Matthews, is found guilty of assault. With a final bang of the gavel, their fates were sealed. Alyssa and her father were each handed prison sentences, hers shorter but no less damning, his far more severe. As the officers approached to take them away, Alyssa turned to look at me, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something real in her, a hint of regret, maybe even fear. But it was too late. The lies, the betrayal, everything had come full circle. I watched as they were led out of the courtroom, the whispers of onlookers filling the air. Alyssa glanced over her shoulder one last time, but I didn't look away. I'd fought too hard for this moment, endured too much pain to feel anything but relief as she disappeared down the hall, vanishing into the consequences of her own choices. For the first time since that nightmare of a night at the lake house, I felt I could finally breathe. Justice had been served, and the darkness they'd tried to pull me into had been left behind them, locked away for good. When it was all over, I visited my mother, now safe and far from the horrors of that night. "It's over, Mom. Justice was served," I told her, as we sat together on her porch in Pennsylvania, the autumn leaves drifting softly in the breeze. She hugged me, a bittersweet tear in her eye. We both knew it would take time to heal, but we finally had closure. Now, as I look back, I realize the impact of that night will always stay with me. It's a scar that reminds me of what happens when people choose lies over truth, darkness over light. But I know now that I did the right thing, and I'll keep fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, no matter the cost.